Okay, all right, now use the microphone. So, hi everyone. Thanks for having me, Cormac, Dave, and everyone at Intercom and all that. So, my name is John Brett. Twitter handle and GitHub there if anyone wants to reach out to me or has any questions after this. So, yeah, background on me. I'm a lead engineer at a company called D4H Technologies. And what we do is software for emergency response teams and emergency services. So we have customers ranging from like coast guards to fire service or on-site pharmaceutical, that type of thing. And basically we offer them the tools they need to do their job, which is save lives. So they come to us with things like pen and paper, spreadsheets, managing everything from their equipment to their reporting to qualifications and who's trained in what. And we give them basically the tools they need to do their job, basically. And it's a pretty interesting place to work. That's our office, for anyone that doesn't know. That's a Bailey Lighthouse out in Howth. Had to get in there. And that was taken by one of our customers, the Irish Coast Guard, from their helicopter. So, yeah, anyway, what I wanted to talk about today was Hapi. We've been working with it for the last 6 months, building a new API, and it's worked well for us. So I just wanted to talk about what it is, and certainly if anyone is using it themselves, I'd love to talk to you afterwards. So what you might want to know about it, what are the benefits of using it over a different Node framework, and just a quick run through of how to build something in it that can scale pretty quick. Yeah, so what is it? It's another Node framework. I don't think there's as many as client-side frameworks these days, but I think it's much better than any of the competing frameworks like Express or Kraken. We did pretty extensive research when we were looking into which framework to use when we were building an API. And why it lets you focus on building your APIs and applications instead of rebuilding the same architecture every time you go to build a new project in Node. Does this by giving you a modular structure to work for it, by trying to give you the features out of the box so you can just configure these instead of trying to rebuild them and copy and paste code every time. And it's getting pretty widespread adoption in the last 6 months. So the likes of NPM and of course Walmart, the guys behind it, and ourselves as well. Yeah, so much differences in existing frameworks. The routing is quite different in Hapi compared to what you'd expect from Express or Restify and stuff like that. So anyone I've seen with deterministic routing, so each endpoint matches a single request. So you can't have conflicting routes and stuff like that. So that's less flexible, some might say. I think it's good because at least you know each route definition only matches one endpoint. Where in the likes of Express or something like that, you need to understand the whole application workflow to know the order your handlers are going to be called in and stuff like that. And then the flexibility that you'd need is offered through things like the request lifecycle and pre and post handlers. And then the route definition is quite expressive themselves, so it lets the code document itself. It also offers a plugin structure, so it encourages modular code instead of giant monoliths with huge directories of modulars and controllers and stuff like that. And they're pretty powerful. Anything you can do in a server, the full server API is passed into a plugin as well. And then they offer good ways of sandboxing your code. So something like template engines, you could have one team working with like handlebars and another working with Jade, and each plugin can register its own template engine. And then there's a great ecosystem of these plugins out there built by the Walmart labs and other open source projects. So other differences to other frameworks, it's enterprise grade as they describe it. So it's 100% test coverage, which I think is the minimum any project should have. I think some people disagree, and it's certainly hard to get anything over, I'd say 90 on most projects, but I was watching a talk by Aaron Hammer, the tech lead, and he said for every percent they got over 85% on the Hapi project, discovered a huge bug that would have cost developers using it weeks, but it was good they put in the effort so we don't have to. It also adheres to Semver, and I think some people disagree with Semver as well, but I think it's good to be able to, when you're choosing Node modules and frameworks, to see how often they break changes and break their APIs and how they handle that. So when you look at Hapi, you know they've done it 7 times. Because it's on version 7, and every time they release detailed release notes on how to migrate from one version to another. They've also a full-time team supporting it from day one. It's open source from day one. and are committed to community leadership, so things like diversity and good mentoring programs. And if you ever want to watch or learn how to organize an open source project that's going to have hundreds and thousands of users, they do it pretty well. So it's worth watching the repo and see how they go about that. So the benefits to using it that we found, you have a more sane code base, so you can take that with a pinch of salt. It's my opinion on it anyway. All your code is context, which I think is huge. So anyone adopting, new developers joining your project, they know where to find everything and be able to follow the code. Things like a small index.js, which I think is important in terms of trying to comprehend a new application you might have started working on. You get to avail of the great plugins the Walmart team and other people have written. The functionality is built in and tested from the start, so you don't have to worry about whether one version of, say, something like Passport works with version 4 of Express, things like that. It's 100% tested for each module within Hapi. And then, so it being a framework gives you extra features like input validation. The structure lets certain modules combine in a way that the small module approach doesn't always give you. So yeah, how would you go about building something in? So these are pretty much the common problems you run in with building an application in Node, I find, or trying to, when adopting a framework that you're going to run into. So if you can handle most of these, I think you've got the building blocks to build an application. So I was going to take you through how to do it with Hapi. So this is a simple Hapi server, no roots or anything like that. So you just require the Hapi module, instantiate your object, give it a port, start it, and you're good to go. So simple, small index.js, which I think is important, as I mentioned. So persistence, adding your database access and have it be shared among all your resources and models and controllers. And Dave, I think 2 months ago, talked about level DB, so I thought it'd be the handiest to add to the project and show how easy it is to do something like that. For anyone who doesn't know what level DB is, it's just a simple embeddable DB, so it doesn't run on a separate server and port. So it's a simple, fast key store. It was written by Google. So yeah, to add it to a Hapi server, it's as simple as use this plugin register, or server register API. So that's how you register plugins to your server. So it's pretty straightforward. You just pass in an object with the plugin property, and you can use a direct node module or some directory. And that's it. So when you go to use it, you can just use server.plugins, Hapi level. That would store and retrieve a user, but obviously it would make sense to do it like that. You want something like routing then to make sense and offer features to your users. So routing is pretty simple. So if we look at there's a simple routing example. So it's quite different to Express. It's a bit more expressive and kind of documents itself on how it works. So you just specify the method, the path, your handler, and then you'll notice that you don't have to worry about body parsing or cookie parsing or anything like that. That's all handled already for you. I think it's huge. So you can always know that request.params.id is the parameter ID as part of the path. And that would simply just retrieve a user by its ID. It's quite straightforward for anyone who's comes fresh to the project and is trying to understand how it works. You'll notice there's no next because it doesn't pass the control flow onto next handler as like Express or something like that would. User reply and the reply runs on process.next tick, so you can add any extra headers you might need to, and then on next round that'll be returned in the response. So yeah, obviously that type of approach wouldn't scale. You're going to end up with huge files of roots or a large index if you keep it that way. I prefer modular code, and each code should have its context, so I like to put things in plugins. So looking at this example, that's a user root, so it should be in a user plugin. So you simply push it into a plugin like that, and you're back to your nice, simple, understandable index. And then this is how a plugin would appear. So similar to a node module, accepts 3 parameters. The plugin's parameter, which is basically the server alias, so anything the server can do, all those APIs are passed into the plugin as well. So it's quite powerful in that regard. Options is just anything you might put in when registering a plugin, and then next returns the control flow back to the server. Yeah, so authentication is one of the ones that I generally find hard when implementing a new Node application. And I found this quite easy and Hapi as it's come built into the framework. So it uses schemes and strategies, so similar to Passport would. A scheme is basically the common thing, like something like OAuth or basic auth or cookie, where they just parse the authorization headers. And then a strategy is what you do with that, so compared to like a token in your database or something like that. So the simple server example we have, and we add authentication. So it looks like a lot of code, but it's not actually too bad. So Hapi auth bearer token, that's a scheme, so it just parses the authorization token out of a request, and then it passes into the strategy. Required just means that every route within the application is already requires authentication, so you don't have to keep putting it into every route. So any existing routes are now authenticated without me have to add each one of them. The validate function, you can see it just accepts token and reply. So reply would pass onto the next step of the request lifecycle. Token is just the tokens that's been parsed out of the request. If that was like basic auth, that would be user and password passed into that method. So obviously here we're doing something simple like comparing it to a sample string, but usually you'd check that against the database. Yeah, and then those credentials that you pass back, they get stored in the request object, so they're always available to you in like a plugin or later down the life cycle. And yeah, so again, this is going to lead to a large index.js, so you just can push that into a plugin as before, and everything gets nice and readable and manageable again. So input validation. So one of the big things that Hapi comes with built in is a really nice input validation tool called Joy. So when it comes to your routing, you can simply validate all your any parameters that might be in a request. So we have ID in this example, so we want to make sure that that's a string. Someone's not trying to pass in, or sorry, an int. Someone's not trying to pass in a string or some JavaScript object or a function or something like that we'd have to make sure. And we can reuse this then throughout our different routes. And then description I've just added here because it gives you more details about the particular endpoint. And we can use that later for documentation generation. So I know personally, I'd rather spend an hour writing like excellent input validation instead of trying to maintain documentation for any endpoints or routes when you're writing an application. So in a simple server, we just add an extra module. So this is called Hapi Swagger. I don't know if anyone's familiar with Swagger or has used it before. But it's basically, it's a project, it's for language agnostic. So it's available in Java or PHP. So generally, you would use code annotations and it'll generate a JSON specification. And from that, they can generate documentation that's interactive for your particular application. So hopefully that makes sense. So from this, just adding this plugin to the Hapi project, it can take your routing definitions, your input validation, all that, and generate documentation from it, which would look something like this. So you can see in this example, you've got your user ID, your description, and your parameters all added in. And it's also interactive on the page, so when offering that to your customers, it's pretty easy to get them to adopt to your API. One of the things I learned from talking about Hapi before is you can actually get this to generate client APIs. So as well as getting the documentation for free, you get a client API that you can give to people who might be building mobile apps or anything like that. So that's just an open source project, the Swagger Ajax client. You pass in the JSON specification that was generating your documentation, and you simply get an API back. So it's pretty cool to be able to just write one route definition or an application full of route definitions. You get documentation for free and a client API, all that kept together. So I thought it was pretty cool. So other features I didn't talk about that Hapi offers is packs. Is within one, we'll say, application, you can have different packs where you might apply different plugins to different servers. So for us, we might have an equipment server, or member server or team server, but have the one plugin apply to all three. So it's kind of like a microservices approach nearly to solving some of your problems. Caching is built in at application level. You could just add that into our root definitions, just an extra property, and it would cache it. And then there's different plugins for Redis or in-memory and stuff like that. Views is just a templating. It's all built in, I think, to support every template in the engine, handlebars, Jade, and all those. Has proxies out of the box, so reverse proxy and all that type of stuff. Lab is their test runner. I found it easier to use than Mocha, and has test coverage built in and all that. Poop is their module for catching an uncaught exception, so taking a process dump and cleaning it up afterwards. And then they also have batch endpoints, so if you had 3 requests that happened together for like mobile applications, like retrieve a user details and update and something else, you can do them in one using the batch endpoint module. So things to take away from this. Yeah, happy apps make happy developers, so easier code to manage. Gives you saner code bases. Your code is context. If you put them in plugins, generally readable. The code documents itself because of like the expressive routing definitions, stuff like that. Lets you focus on building value. So you don't have to write things you don't want to maintain. You just get to write what offers business value. And you get to automate as much as possible. So we usually put loads of effort into deployment and testing. Why not? For documentation, the things you don't want to do, and generating client APIs. Anything we have to update or keep in sync, we should try to automate that, and that's what this helps with. So it's just links to all the things I mentioned in the project, and that's pretty much all I have for you.
Thanks, John.
Any questions?
Is it possible to integrate through all Hapi promises? Because I saw in the code a lot of callbacks, and I just tried promises, and I enjoy the syntax because it's beautiful.
So the question there was, can we use promises throughout Hapi? I'm a big fan of promises as well. So for things like server start and stuff like that, that's all callback endpoints. But in the version that's about to come out, I'd say maybe Monday, they're adding promise support for handlers. I think handlers are probably the only places you actually really need them. So if your database like returns a promise, like a database call, you can feed that back to the handler in reply, and they'll support promises that way.
Second question, I saw LevelDB is supported inside the application, but I think it also supports some kind of SQL databases and also Mongo or not.
So the Hapi thing, that the module that I showed there.
I understood, but my question maybe, who developed this module? It's some external developers or inside this big team?
The Hapi level one I wrote myself, it's about like 5 lines long, and it simply instantiate the Hapi level. It just requires LevelDB, and then it uses a thing called plugin.expose, and then that just offers it throughout Hapi. So you can just go server.plugins, and you've got your database access everywhere throughout the application. But you can do the same with MySQL or any like ORM or anything like that, and there's a few of them already built, and they're all listed on the Hapi.js website as well.
I think his question was if the MySQL plugins or Postgres plugins were written by the core developers or some events.
All right, sorry. So I don't think any of the database or external access modules would be written by the Hapi team. They'd be written by whoever maintains the MySQL plugins or anything like that.
So I just didn't understand what kind of the equivalent of Express middleware would be. Like, if you have some functions that you need to pass certain requests through before you send them back, how do you do that?
I'm not quite sure what you mean. Pass functions.
Let's say you have a function that adds some data to the request, and then another function after that one processes that data and adds another thing to the request, which is what you're going to return in the end. So you have kind of multiple middlewares that you want to reuse through your app selectively on certain routes. Like, how do you accomplish that?
So the pre and post handlers. So each handler you can define like pre and post handlers. So a couple of different steps that might happen before the actual handler is called, and then you can also attach events to the request lifecycle. So I think there's like 9 stages of the request lifecycle. So like on pre-auth, auth, on validation, on handler, and then on response. So if you need it attached to those, it's like attaching to an event emitter, just like on, and you could do that in a plugin, so plugin.on, something like that.
I'm just going to feature follow up that question with one even more specific. So say you have an API endpoint and you want to allow side loading of data so that people don't have to make 3 or 4 API requests, they can just make one instead. So they could ask for a certain user ID and then say also sideload the favorite music and favorite other things of this user, like with 3 or 4 sideloads.
Yeah.
How can you achieve that with Hapi?
So the plugin was the last one I mentioned, the batch endpoints. So you can just have those individual API endpoints and then use that one plugin to gather all those 4 requests at once and return it into one API or one response.
Cool.
Is your system a real-time system?
No.
Because I was a question why you ever choose Node.js as a platform, but if it is not a real-time, it is not so.
No, we're just building an API for mobile apps and for customer integrations and stuff like that. Okay, and thanks.
Thanks very much, John.
Cheers.